university which is bubbling with so much excitement and talent and agreements, disagreements, and this is how life should be, you know. I intend to keep it very interactive, so I'll just speak for maybe 10 minutes or so to set up the whole discussion, and then, or maybe a little bit more than that, and then I think we have an hour. We'd like to freely discuss and ask each other questions, and perhaps take, I don't know what we intend to take home from this discussion, but I think it should be worthwhile discussion. I'm really looking forward to that. The topic of the discussion is nation building the right way. So there are 3 or 4 things that jump out of it. One is that, is there nation building the left way? I think it's national destruction the left way, so let's keep out of that. The other thing is it the right way, or should it be nation building the correct way? I don't think we should go into the labels. If history has taught us anything, it is that both the right and the left, or any other label you might want to throw on people, it's a pretty useless exercise. It's self-defeating, because ultimately either left or right, both to a very large extent have not only possess the same qualities, would like to control the narrative in a very similar fashion. And I've come to this conclusion after maybe 10 or 12 years of thinking about this, that more than branding anyone or labeling anyone left or right, one should determine whether that person is social Darwinian or not, because both the left as well as the right have this propensity to indulge in social Darwinism, which I'll explain in case people don't know what social Darwinism is. So I think the correct thing would be nation building the correct way. And of course, I'm not here to give you a pravachan as what is correct and what is incorrect. It's just my reading of what should be the right, correct way of going forward. But the third thing that jumps out is rather sad, which is that we are going to celebrate the 75th year of our independence, gaining independence, and still we are concerned about nation building. Now that's a pretty sad thought, to be honest. You know, if you want to build your nation, you should have finished building your nation in the first 5 or 10 years, to be honest. Anything more than that is a direct pointer to how we have failed as a nation. So you can say a failed nation's nation building the correct way. That's how I look at it. But I think it's a good topic in the sense that one can still learn, even though it's disappointing that we still are having to build this nation. The fact remains that till not so long ago, about 30% of India was still without electricity. Till not so long ago, 70% of India did not have bank accounts. Till not so long ago, 45% of Indians did not use cooking gas. So yeah, I mean, we have to build the nation. And if by building the nation means giving basic amenities, is that really building the nation? I mean, I look at this university, it's a fantastic place of learning. Every student out here comes from, I hate to use the word, but it is correct, privileged background, you can say, in the sense their families have cooking gas, tap water connection, electricity, all those bank accounts, everything that still a huge chunk or millions of people in India don't have. So you've already built your nation, if I can put it that way. What does one do after one builds a nation? I think that's a very important question. Then what? Once you built your nation, once you have everything, what do you do then? Well, you know, famous people have said or quipped that is when revolutions begin, because revolutions never begin on empty stomach, which is a rather scary thought that, you know, once you've got all your basic amenities set up, then you're going to pour onto the streets and mayhem and anarchy will ensue. But no, I don't think that will happen. But we have to get ready to start thinking about the next stage of a nation's development. And that is the real prosperous stage. That is when you can say that a nation's patent is going to give back the return. You know, there is one thing which is patent filing. 98% of people file their patents, but as I said, most of them don't end up making money for the corporations or people who file the patent. Only 2% or 1.5% patents are really successful in that. So once you've become this, once you've built your nation, all your highways and bank accounts and everything is built, that is the stage when you have to think, where do we go forward? How do we create value? Now that value could be wealth in terms of commodities, Saudi Arabia, oil wealth, you explore more, you get richer. That value could be creativity in the arts. That value could be in the sciences, new discoveries, new inventions. It could be in I've already said arts, but arts can also mean, you know, a lot of other mechanisms, you know, could be writing, could be films, could be a lot of other things. Now, so let's put that in this domain of creativity. Now that is all happening once you built your nation. And many nations falter at this step. You know, once you give everything, if you look, you only have to look at Middle Eastern nations, trust me. Our GDP per capita right now is $2,500. It has been hovering around that stage for about 10 years now. COVID has disrupted what could have been 5 trillion economy in 2 years' time. It will probably take longer, but I would say in the next 10 years we would be at best $3,000 per capita. Now there are many Middle Eastern nations. Syria comes to mind before it imploded. Its per capita was 15,000, which was at the same stage as China's was. In fact, right now China is $15,000 to $20,000, $15,000 middle income economy. But look where Syria is now. So it is wrong to say that we are going to, a nation has to progress step by step. Because what happens once you built your nation? You have wondrous highways like Syria did or Lebanon did, and everyone's earning, you know, more than $10,000, $12,000 per year. And still the nation implodes into smithereens. What this means is that it has to be in step. Everything has to go in step. You cannot just stall your creativity and your freedom to express what you want to do, to discover, to innovate, to write, to make films. Wait for such a time when the rest of your country will be able to appreciate it more because they don't have to worry about where their next meal is going to come from. So having said that, let me cut a long story short and then we'll keep it very interactive. I'll say it's a conscientious decision on the part of our polity to take our nation, if not backwards, forwards in a very kind of incremental, selfish way, selfish that would help the politicians rather than the people who elect them. And I say this with the only thing in mind that the only way India can actually progress, build very quickly, is through leapfrogging. We can no longer go incrementally. We are now possibly the most populous nation in the world. I think last week we overtook even China. China took a very drastic decision, you know, to junk communism. On the face of it, they still say that they are a communist country, but they could not have become so rich had they stayed a communist country, which has been the example of every communist country in the world. Every country that has espoused communism has been destroyed sooner or later. So China junked that and became rich. What happens now? Thankfully, we would not be in the stage where China is right now, always on the brink of a revolution that happened, that was then ruthlessly pummeled in the Tiananmen Square massacre. But there would be as to paraphrase Naipaul, a million mutinies in China, because they're rich now. They are thinking of things other than their next meal. We are not at that stage now. But let me give you an idea of, I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s. Whatever basic amenities you have now, you really had to stand in line for all of those things when we were kids. I mean, a phone, which you don't even think about it, used to take months, if not years. The landline connection, gas cylinder was the same, scooter was the same, everything, bank accounts, even a Godrej Almirah, there was a line for that. And we thought that, giving phone connections to every Indian would possibly take 50 years, because the number of landlines we had even 15, 20 years ago were 20, 30 million in a nation of 1 billion. But then something happened, technology came, and we leapfrogged. We did not have to install physical landline infrastructure in order to give a phone to every Indian. And right now, because of this leapfrogging technology, every Indian has a phone connection. This is what I mean. But I come back to that, the whole situation is that how do we build this country with the kind of opposition we have? And I put to you that it is not just a curse for us that we have the kind of opposition we have. It is what is worse is, it is a blessing for the BJP, the kind of opposition we have. And I say that because in every good or great decision that this ruling dispensation Modi government has taken, that is worthy of applause. There are many in the last 8 years, you have to have many. The government would have had to have succeeded, otherwise it wouldn't have been voted back again to power. So many. And the opposition is outraged on each one of them, starting from demanding for proof for the surgical strike, to CAA, to 370, to even Ayushman Bharat insurance scheme, to even Ujjwala, to even making toilets. Everything is outraged upon, and the decisions that this government has taken against the national interests, and again there have been many, and I will recount those, the opposition has supported the government in that. Now, how can a nation progress when the opposition that is supposed to criticize the government when it goes against India and Indians, it actually supports the government? So the BJP is having a great party, because the BJP doesn't need to worry about the things that it does well, because the people realize it has done well and vote for it. And the things that it does against the national interest, the opposition is saying, yeah, well done, well done, carry on. And that is the tragedy. We the people expect, we are supposed to be, I mean, Modi said, hum sab chaukidar hain. Now, I'm just saying this because all of us are chaukidar, but the opposition is not a chaukidar. And I'll give you 3 or 4 examples before I throw open the whole discussion. And it's a real tragedy what is happening, because the government is getting scot-free. No one is bothered about it, because in the parliament they're not discussing these issues because the opposition is with the government. Let me give you the first example. Now, I, along with a good friend of mine, Karan Bhasin, who's a young economist, did a lot of digging and found out that we have 1,830 odd public sector units. Out of them, 400 are non-functional. They're not functional, they're on paper. These are public sector units. 21% of our yearly budgetary allowance goes in propping up these public sector units. This year, Ms. Sitaraman allocated 40 lakh crores, 45 lakh crores. A fifth of that is in propping up these sick public sector units. 400 of them are not. There is still a public sector unit that was, I think, thankfully shut last year, that was involved in making chlorofluorocarbons that has been banned by WHO in 1989. The government was still paying it thousands of crores. Non-existent. It's not producing anything. These are, let alone white elephants, these are dead elephants. We're carrying them along, we're wasting money on that. The Prime Minister in 2013 said a government has no business to be in business, rightly so. But right now what this government has done is All this government has done is to be in the business of being business. There has been no privatization except Air India in the last 8 years, and that too Air India has gone on for 30, 40 years. It has accumulated losses of 70,000 crores. Worse than Air India is BSNL, you know, those network providers that has lakhs of crores. But then who opposes the privatization of these sick public sector units? It is the opposition. The opposition sides with the government. It says keep on paying this, you know, lakhs of crores to these public sector units. 400 of them are even non-functional. We don't care. We won't allow privatization. Is this nation building? I ask you. You can fine a person, jail that person for taking 20 rupees as a bribe and you know, throw him in the clanger for 20 years. And out here lakhs and lakhs of crores of your money is being wasted. And the opposition is allowing it to be wasted. What is national interest there? What is national building? Nation building. Point number 2, you have these sick public sector banks. They have NPAs totaling 6 lakh crores. Rife with corruption. You want a loan, you go to a public sector bank, the bank says no, you go to a minister, minister says you better pay that loan. It's been going on for donkey's years. It will be foolhardy for you to think it's not going on in the current dispensation. The reason why these banks exist is because to have corruption. It has been going on for ever since Indira Gandhi nationalized the banks. But then who opposes the privatization of these banks? It is the opposition. So the government will not privatize these banks. You have the land acquisition bill. You have companies who want to set up, want to buy land. Who opposed the land acquisition bill? It was the opposition. You have the High Court convicting, it's not just hearing the case, convicting the present government of financial fraud by violating the FCRA guidelines of accepting money from a foreign company. And the punishment for that, for common people, is 5 years. So for 5 years, someone like JP Nadda should have been behind bars. Conviction. And what happened? The very next day, in broad daylight, this government retrospectively amended the FCRA Act going back to the emergency era, nullifying the conviction. Now, if this happened in a civilized state with a responsible opposition, the opposition would be on the streets saying, resign, how dare you go retrospectively change the act that has stood for 40 years, change it. Change the definition of a foreign donor so that the High Court is without fangs. This is what the opposition would have done, but the opposition voted for the amendment. And you know why? Because the opposition also was convicted by the High Court for taking this money. This is your opposition. Is this nation building? And in their haste to amend, they didn't even read the act properly. Because 3 years down the line, what they had done was amended so that you could take donations post 2010. They said, oh my God, we forgot. Both our parties took donations even before 2010. So they went back to the parliament 3 years later and they amended it again. And again, the opposition backed the BJP. This is going on. Did you ever even know of this? I didn't know of this till 3 years ago. How many of you knew of this conviction of BJP by FCRA, by High Court? Raise your hands, please. This is the state of our media, where even non-Godi media, if I can say, the other media that accuses the rest of the media as Godi media, wasn't it their responsibility to make you aware of this? But they didn't, because then Congress also would have been put on the dock. So there is agenda all through. It would be foolhardy to believe that everyone is in nation building. But the most glaring example, which really pains me, because it hits really hard, is this case of these farm bills. And this is my final one before I end and I throw it open. You see, these 3 farm bills were on the manifesto of every political party for more than 3 elections worth, which is 15 years. They have been deliberated for 16 years in various parliamentary committees. Swaminathan committee comes to mind. These 3 farm bills were, or farm reforms you can call it, you amend the Essential Commodities, or you do away with the Essential Commodities Act, which is that the government has no longer the power to declare that now this whatever a business corporation does with the farm produce, I would call it hoarding, and put that fellow in jail, so that businesses weren't setting up godowns and your agricultural produce was only worthwhile if it was fresh. You could not store it. So it wasn't really worthy of going into and making a profit for business people to set up godowns all year round, as what happens in other economies. The second was to do away with the APMC government declared mandis, where the government would decide the price of a produce, which is unprecedented and draconian and reeks of Soviet Union. Why the hell should the government dictate the price of the produce if it is in the market? Tomorrow you make a produce, one of you is a businessman, would you like it if the government dictated what it should cost? And the third was to bring in contract farming, which is again is logical. Let a businessman decide that I want from this piece of land this farm produce and I'll pay you. Now, why are these three things, these farm reforms, why were they in the manifesto of every opposition and the ruling dispensation? Because they signified growth. They signified India leapfrogging. And why do I say that? I say that because we are a unique country. We have a 515 million active labor force out of 1.4 billion population. And 44% of that 515 million people, labor force, is involved in agriculture. 44%. It is unprecedented. In the Western nations, it is not more than 2%. In developed economies or middle income going to reach developed state, it's 3%. 44% of our labor force is involved in a sector that contributes only 13% to our GDP, where the whole mechanisms haven't changed for hundreds of years. 94% of the people who work in there are not insured. 170,000 farmers have committed suicide in the last 15 odd years. 83% of Indian households are dependent on agriculture. These farm reforms would have catapulted us to a middle income economy within 15 years. And what happens? These reforms were brought in, and all the opposition parties that had them in their manifesto, and Congress especially had it almost verbatim, point number 9, point number 11, and point number 12. They said, they took a U-turn. They said these farm reforms are black laws. They started supporting the middlemen who went illegally and captured and blockaded the highways. And all the media got split. Instead of looking at reason, no one has asked Rahul Gandhi or any of the opposition or Mamata Banerjee or anyone. These were in your manifestos. You wanted these reforms. Even the Supreme Court, they had a committee. They asked for what do the farmers want. And it turned out 83% of the farmers were for the farm reforms. Why wouldn't they be? Of course they would be. Because they were staring at a future where 58% of the farmers don't want their children to take up farming. These are stats, these are well-known stats. MSP has led to 16 lakh to 20 lakh crores of losses for the farmers. This is IARI data that the government itself has collated. And overnight there were protests, and it took a year shamefully for this government to backtrack and take back these farm bills. Catastrophic decision. But it doesn't end there, because again when the opposition supported the government in the repealing of the farm laws, what did the media do? The media should have asked, in any civilized country, if you want to bring a law that will make a business person or a farmer, in this case an entity, profitable, and then you don't enact that law, you should be sued, because I'm hitting your stomach. And here the government was not just hitting one stomach, it was hitting 44% of 515 million, 250 million odd stomachs. There should have been a class action suit on the government. Pay us, compensate us for the monetary loss. The fact that you have taken back these farm laws, notwithstanding the 3,000 crore loss per day for almost a year of all those shops that are set up near the highways that were blocked illegally. So as I said, we are a banana republic from the time we became a republic, because all our entities are not concerned about nation building. Any other country, you should have sued the government. In America, I dare say they would have sued the government. How can you take back something that is clearly you have been professing will make the farmers profit for a year? Supreme Court committee has said yes it would. Swaminathan committee, yes it should. And then you say that I am taking these farm laws back in national interest. How can you say it is? Explain. It's an abstract decision. Government should never make abstract decisions. And I'll tell you how it will hurt us. And then you will realize India still remains or is the world's second largest producer of sugarcane. Every year we produce 350 billion kilograms of sugarcane. 350 billion kilograms. The water, and I've done all this data, so I'm telling you this. The water that is required to grow this crop, 350 billion kilograms of sugarcane, is 1 quadrillion liters of water, which is equivalent to 10 Ganga Sagar dams. Sugarcane is a water intensive crop. You require only 9% of arable land to grow the sugarcane, but 72% of the water that is used for irrigation. It is unsustainable. Unsustainable. And what has happened in the last 5 years? Sugar prices have halved. And what has happened? The politicians have increased the MSP equivalent that they give to the farmers for sugarcane. They want the farmers to keep growing the sugarcane. For what? The same is the case with rice, with wheat. Our buffer stock is right now 66 million tons more than what it should be. We should have 33.5 million tons of rice. In FCI godowns, we have 100 million tons. Rats are consuming that rice. But the opposition wants the MSP to be increased. The opposition doesn't want the MSP to be done away with. Is this national interest? Is this how you build nations? Is this how you encourage the ruling dispensation? Our water capacity per capita has more than halved in 25 years. It used to be 2,300 cubic meters. Right now it is 1,200 cubic meters. We won't have water in the next 15 years. Right now we have, in Latur, we had water trains going and politicians were inaugurating those water trains. They should have been put behind bars. You have smiling mugs of politicians inaugurating water trains. 63% of river water that is used for irrigation goes into the sea every year. 63%. Supreme Court has said what has happened. It's been 15 years since we said start linking rivers. Scientists have said report after report, yes, we can do it in a manner that is ecologically and scientifically sound. Supreme Court said do it. Where is it? Every year 63% of the water goes waste. And we have water trains. And we have sugar cane. And it is not that the politicians don't know this. This is the real tragedy. 7 years ago, the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, he promulgated a law whereby a farmer would have to take permission of the government if he wanted to grow sugarcane, because he was worried about the water loss. Within 2 weeks, the opposition, patriarch, I won't name that person, Padma Vibhushan, he holds a strong sugar lobby that requires sugar cane, molasses, to make rum. He forced the government to take back that order. Was that for the country? In 10 years from now, we will drink Old Monk, but we won't have water to drink, and the politicians will be smiling. So, it is all right to criticize everyone, a politician, but you have to think, what is more profitable for this country, for me? Do I criticize Modi, or do I criticize people who are allowing him to ruin this country? That is where I would stop right now, and I would throw it open for any questions that you have, any ideas that you have to build the nation the correct way. Thank you.
A couple of days ago, me and one of my friends, we had the fortune of meeting Conrad Elst. We were having a discussion with him, and this question does not concern the theme of our discussion, but I would still like to ask you. We were having a discussion, and he said that whatever, considering the current media and everything, whatever we want to say about our dharma, we should always back it with scientific temper. If we do it that way, no amount of propaganda would be able to change people's mind. So I have two questions for you. One, what are your views on this? And second, there are a lot of things in our dharma which are beyond science. How would we back it?
Yes, I remember the Rajnikant meme where he says this is beyond science. No, but I think one has to be very realistic about this. Science and religion do not meet. You cannot use science to explain away religion. For example, I cannot, 99.9% of this world is religious. Maybe 90% extremely religious. Now, and I'm not, but I'm not here to tell everyone that, hey guys, you're wrong and you're silly and this and that. I'm just here to say that this is what I believe in. This is my, So I'm not here to tell someone who believes that Jesus walked on water to say, no, that is impossible, or Jesus turned water to wine, or Prophet Muhammad, went on a winged horse, or, you have 10-headed gods or 4. I'm not here to dispel those because science hasn't proven it. I'm just here to put forth my view. And I think a lot of what is happening right now is that the people who believe in religion, they are getting a lot perturbed by the fact that their theories which they have believed in, they simply don't stand up to the test of time or to science. I think that is where a lot of, I can say, a kind of confrontation is happening. But I'm not a militant atheist, to be honest, because it's a pointless exercise. It's like saying for 70 years we know that every nation that espoused communism has been destroyed. So communism kills in more ways than one, and yet you find millions of people who are still communists. I'm not here to change that. It's a self-defeating exercise. So to use science as a tool to explain religion itself is a kind of deeply ironical and a circle where it's a bit bizarre. I don't think one can do that. A believer should be pleased with what he believes in, and if he stops believing in that, then good for that person. 700 years ago, half the world believed that the earth was flat. Now, is it still half the world that believes it? No. People saw evidence. They saw reproducible evidence. They saw how science disproved a lot of things. Of course, science doesn't have answer to everything, but the ones that it does have answer to, it puts it in front of you. It doesn't ask you to, tomorrow I say a lot of things about religion, my neck would be on the line. My neck is obviously always on the line, but I'm just saying this. But if tomorrow, I were to say that cold fusion is a reality and you were to say, no, it is not, I'm not going to kill you. You say, no, it's not, you've not proven it. So, and that is what actually science teaches you. Science teaches you humility. If there is one thing that, a take-home message that, young people should have, it is humility. Religion does not teach you humility. Religion teaches you exclusivity. Now, a lot of you may say that Hinduism, first of all, believe me, I don't see Hinduism as religion at all. It is a way of life. The religion part of Hinduism is an offshoot of the way of life.
Sir, in fact, dharma and religion are two very different
Correct. Dharma is not religion at all, it's this thing. But to give you an example how science is self-correcting and humility stems from it, is barely 100 years ago, if you look at what is called the tree of life in science, which tells you where all the organisms that we know of are situated. So you make a tree, you have all these branches, and you were to see at the time of Darwin this tree of life. And you see monkey here, you see ant here, you see all those organisms that were discovered, hanging on to, and man sitting on top of the tree. Trust me, look at a 100-year-old lithograph of the tree of life, man would be sitting on top. You see the modern tree of life, it has 6,000 branches and man is hardly hanging on to one of the branches, What you learn from it is humility, that we are nothing, we are just a bunch of cells. We're not just similar, we are 98.4% identical to a chimpanzee, identical, I don't see myself as Indian, I'm sorry, many people take umbrage with that, I'm an Ethiopian. I am a victim of, or I'm a product of complete chance. Where you had the reduced atmosphere or even neutral atmosphere, and you had water, you had electricity, and that produced those basic chemicals that led to, Jostak's protocell, that led to Stemmer's sexual revolution, sexual PCR, and that led to the accumulation of adaptation through mutations that have led me to where I am. So I am here today, gone tomorrow, it's just, and that is what science teaches you, humility. Religion is the exact opposite. It teaches you exclusivity, supremacy, right? And some religions forbid you to worship anyone else except their own God. So it's an antithesis of science. It is self-defeating to use one tool to explain the other.
Yeah. First of all, sir, my name is Rishabh and I'm a student of law. So time and again, I tend to connect things with the legal aspects of what's happening around us. So when you talked about how the opposition, or even we as a public in general are not criticizing where we should have.
Yes.
So is it really like that? Is it the deficiency in the trust of people over the pillar of judiciary is why people are not criticizing it while people are not suing for the wrongs that are happening? Or is it the lack of the proper education system that is why that the example you quoted about the opposition actually supporting the government for all the things that it shouldn't have? So what kind of folds are we right now in that either it's what kind of problems are we facing it on which front? So is it the judiciary that people are not trusting? Is there some kind of a problem with the education system that we're not understanding things quite well? What is it actually that we should be looking more upon?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it goes to the nub of the issue. And I'm a firm believer, by the way, in educating people that at least you know what the issues are, but only to some extent. I believe reform and change is only possible from the top down, not the bottom up. Revolutions happen from the bottom up, and we see most of the revolutions how they end up in tragedy. So you can have a very educated populace, very aware of all the laws and everything, and they'll bring up these issues. But at the end of the day, the decision has to be taken by the parliament, by the people who you elect. Now you see what is happening. And by the way, I didn't even talk about, I missed a few things that the opposition supports, like the freebies. And you look at the real tragic ping pong game going on where BJP is accusing Congress of giving freebies, and the Congress is accusing BJP. The reality is every political party is giving freebies. If the BJP is accusing AAP of giving free electricity, I took out, a lot of people did not like it, I took out all those instances where the BJP has promised free electricity, free water. Heck, the BJP even promised Christians free trip to Jerusalem if it elected BJP. ये तो कांग्रेस ने भी नहीं किया था. Loan waivers. Look at why BJP lost in Himachal. Congress won because Congress said we will revert to the old pension scheme. And the old pension scheme was rejected by Congress. It was implemented by Manmohan Singh. The whole idea was brought about by Congress's Montexi Ahluwalia, who has, by the way, on record said that reverting to the old pension scheme is the biggest reverie, i.e. freebie, and it will destroy Himachal. 84% of Himachal's tax revenues will now go into this old pension scheme. But what can you do? The people elected Congress back. And looking at Himachal's victory, the emboldened Congress has reverted to old pension scheme in Chhattisgarh and Congress ruled Rajasthan. Socialism wins. That's the tragedy. But how do you remove it? A lot of us know, we have the experience of looking at Cuba, of Soviet Union, of Cambodia, of all the other communist nations, socialist nations, that each one of them, if it has to progress, it has to junk this ideology. But that's textbook. Our leaders have to realize it. And I'm afraid the election cycle has, the talons have clutched the politicians so hard that they're actually not looking at nation building. They are looking at winning the next election. The Congress is very happy it has got Himachal. What does it care if Himachal goes into debt? After 5 years it will lose Himachal, the next government will have that debt, and then they would start protesting that the center is not clearing our debt, we demand more money, as Punjab is doing. The state to GSDP ratio for Punjab is now almost 50%, 3 lakh crore in debt. It doesn't have money for schemes. And yet you keep on, spending more and more. So you're absolutely right. You are aware, I am aware, but we are helpless, impotent. We can't do anything, and I haven't even come to the social issues, where, for example, temples are under government control. Tens of lakhs of crores of Hindu money should go into Hindu causes, or let the Hindus dictate it. But no, the government is dictating it. That is not happening for mosques, for gurdwaras, for churches. You have temple boards on which you have Muslims and Christians appointed. That doesn't happen for St. Francis Church. You have a Hindu appointed. You have a minority commission that looks at in which state and union territory is who will be classified as a minority, and Hindus cannot be part of that commission. So many things are happening that we are powerless to change. But those who have the power to change are not changing it. So, this is I don't know what it is, how you can change it. I'm sorry, it doesn't have a solution.
First of all, welcome. Importance of research in India. So, Niti Aayog recently said that India's R&D expenditure is the lowest in the world.
Yes.
And we had a program recently called Chhatra Niti, whose agenda was including students and scientists in the policy making, in the role of policy making. So, can you throw light upon this, how India should proceed and increase its expenditure in R&D and the importance of research, because countries like Japan and those countries are developing solely on the basis of their extensive and excellent research. Thank you, sir.
That's a great question, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, we spend 0.69%
Yes, sir.
of our GDP on research. Countries even like South Korea spend 3%, even more than that. So amongst all the BRICS, even the BRICS country, we are spending the least. So yes, obviously that's a lacuna. And on the other hand, we say that we must do more research and development and more. So, this is the kind of thing, that the opposition should really hold the government responsible for. But then again, who in the government? People don't have skill in the game. You see, the real tragedy is that no one is sacked for either taking a wrong decision or not taking a decision. I'll give you a great example. You had Lakshmi Kutty. I don't know how many of you know who Miss Lakshmi Kutty was. She's like 90-year-old lady, very frail lady. She got Padma Shri recently, 5 years ago, which was great. And all her life, what she's done is she's made this little forest behind her house. She has a repository of 500 medicinal plants. Now, yes, you've given her Padma Shri, and you've become very happy after that. Yes, that's not your job. Your job would have been to have started 100 Lakshmi Kutty institutes, where each institute would take those plants and find out the active ingredient from that plant. And trust me, out of those 500, at least 50 would be super drugs. But we haven't done it. We've just been satisfied by giving her a Padma Shri. Have we sold any of those 500 plants? No. No one even knows that the pharmacological aspects of that, or even that cornucopia, is not published. Only Lakshmi Kutty has that knowledge. We haven't allowed her to even distribute that knowledge, leave alone start natural products. And India was a great natural product powerhouse in the 50s. We lost all that. And I'll tell you what will happen. 5 years ago, a Chinese lady got the Nobel Prize for the discovery of artemisinin. It is the second drug after chloroquine to be used to cure malaria. It's a product of a plant. And that lady isolated that product. She got the Nobel Prize for it. And we keep harping about, you talk to science policy experts, they say, oh, you publish in Nature, in Science, impact factor 40, impact factor 50. We keep on chasing Western aping, I call it. That Chinese lady published in an journal impact factor of 0.9, not even 1. You know, she got the Nobel Prize. And I'll tell you what will happen. American scientists will go to the forest where Lakshmi Kutty has those plants. They will take 3 or 4 of those plants to America. They will isolate the product from it. It will come out to be the world's largest selling anti-cancer drug. They will get the Nobel Prize for it, and then we will give Padma Bhushan to Lakshmi Kutty. And we will feel very happy about it. Is this the way you conduct research? This is something you can see. This is not something that requires a huge intellect for you to chart out. And that's the problem. We call ourselves the vaccine hub. I'm sorry, I may sound like an eternal pessimist. Believe me, I'm not. I'm just saying that I'm a chowkidar. I love a lot of great things that have happened in the last 10 years, 20 years, of course. But it is for me to point out what isn't happening. That is what nation building is. Nation building is not to sit back and relax and say, I have built the nation. It is say, how do I correct what is going wrong? That is how I'll be able to build the nation. All of us call ourselves the world vaccine hub. How is it that we were 4 months late and millions died because we could not give the vaccines on time? How is it during the Delta wave, we were administering only 0.6 million doses of vaccine, whereas after Delta wave, we were administering 20 million doses every day. Those 19.4 million people who did not vaccinate possibly died, so many of them. Was anyone sacked from this science policy? Why couldn't we get the strain 4 months before we actually did? Why couldn't we give it to Bharat Biotech for it to inactivate? We lost those crucial 4 months. Is this what a world hub does? These are questions that come naturally to you, to me. But does it come to the Prime Minister? Does it come to their advisors? I don't know. So it's glass half full for me at all times. But I bemoan the fact that the glass is always half full. मतलब थोड़ा सा और ऐड कर दो, थोड़ा सा बढ़ा दो उसको, बढ़ता ही नहीं है वो, छेद है नीचे कहीं पे.
फ्रेंडशिप बिफोर नेशन का कॉन्सेप्ट रहता है. सेकंड, जब फ्रेंडशिप बिफोर नेशन खत्म हो गया, देन सेल्फ इमेज का कॉन्सेप्ट आ जाता है. नाउ सर, वी हैव सीन इन योर डिस्कशन कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट हैज टेकन द रोल ऑफ एग्जीक्यूटिव. इट हैज सेट अप अ पैनल फॉर सीए एंड बोला कि फार्मर्स का क्या इंटेंशन है, लेकर आओ. नाउ दे आर सेइंग येस. The 83% of farmers are saying yes, and now the self-image, because minority जो इतने vocal है, they have shut down the voice of majority in CAA case. So sir, what is the way out? Friendship before, क्योंकि socialism का भी बात है, because if Modi is at the prime minister seat, it is not only because of us, it is definitely because of it, but because of its क्या बोलते हैं, many forces which it has led in the in the time that he needs. So sir, how can we overcome this concept for nation building purpose?
Yeah, I think the real tragedy is that while we know how the politicians are two-faced and they would always look at their own greed and their own success before everyone else, that is for granted. I did not know the extent to which the judiciary would not act in the people's favor. That I must admit I am culpable. I mean, for example, you take the farm laws. I mean, the Supreme Court had the temerity to not only suspend the farm laws, to not declare the illegal occupation of those highways for a year to be cleared away, to not compensate the business people who had lost millions because their shops were not accessible anymore. But the temerity to say, where are the people for the farm laws? We don't see them on the streets. That is the worst aspect of this. That tells the psyche. What that tells is that the Supreme Court doesn't even understand that the people who are for the farm reforms are working, producing stuff in the farms. Their job is not to come onto the streets and practice anarchy. The people who are practicing anarchies are actually not farmers. This should have been obvious. If I am a scientist, my job is in the lab. If I am a farmer, my job is in the field. If all those people in Telangana, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu were to go to Supreme Court to say that yes, we are for the farm laws, who would be manning those fields? Does the Supreme Court want that? So this has come as a disappointment that, I mean, and that's the last stop basically. Above that, there is nothing, you know. Of course, there is Parliament, and when the Parliament wants, it can overturn Supreme Court judgment. It has done it so many times. Shah Bano, bank nationalization, even the SC/ST, draconian parts of the SC/ST Act. There also, and you won't believe the tragedy, and this, I'm sorry, I keep remembering the things that the opposition supports the anti-national Modi, is the SC/ST Act. It has draconian provisions that you can arrest just on the basis of allegation. You can arrest anyone. You won't believe it, Dr. Ambedkar actually was against it. And he was the one for whom you can say the SC/ST Act should be. I mean, he was a Dalit. He was against this thing. He said, no, this is anti-freedom. This is wrong. I have the court. The two judges said, yes, Ambedkar is right. You cannot just arbitrarily arrest anyone on the basis of allegation. But Modi overturned the Supreme Court judgment. And who sided with Modi? The opposition. Because nobody can be seen to be going against the SC/ST Act. So now I can just lodge a complaint on SC/ST Act and police will come and arrest me. Investigation jai bhad mein. Is this democracy? But the opposition should be holding the flag of democracy. It is siding. I don't know what the solution is. It's very depressing.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I have two questions. One is, I want your views on the Western power, which has influence on our India development. Like from the history we see, Homi Baba, who had idea of nuclear revolution, power revolution, till now, today's date, what Adani was progressing ahead, and some 5 people's company report comes that company is also not recognized, and the Indian cabal, this 0.5 forces are activated, and you know, this media propagates that Adani has done this and this. So how is the power of Western media, the people, has influence on our development, Indian economy? And second, I would like to know your opinion about 2024 election that is coming, because we are emerging economy. They say we will be in 10 trillion, 5 trillion, this down year line, some 2027, 2030. So what are the consequences if this government continues or if the opposition is coming? What are your views on it? I would like to know.
See, Adani is fine, but soon those guys are laughing. And to be honest, I think I really admire those guys because they put their money where the mouth is. Now, normally if these allegations were made by any newspaper or any media mogul, they shoot and scoot. They make some allegations, and half the time every one of us is involved in rebutting them and saying fake news, and if it turns out to be fake, nothing happens. Those guys are already to the next report. These guys, they bought shares of Adani, right? So if they were wrong, then they would make losses. And if they are right, then they would make profit. So they put their money where the mouth is. which is the way it should go. It is perfect. This is the kind of, I would say, investigation which is perfect. And I would say, I would much rather trust that media house, a newspaper, that alleges a huge financial scam and does short selling. I think the future is for media houses to start doing that, because it is so much more believable then. You bought those shares and you are so sure of your investigation that what Adani is doing is wrong, that his shares would fall and you would make a profit. If what you say is wrong, then you lose. So you are double checking, triple checking your own investigation before you put it in public, because your money is down the line. So I actually don't blame Hindenburg in this. I really don't. I blame the clownish behavior of Adani and his company, which tells you may have $1 billion, but if you can't spend it wisely on people who are there to rebut. And I don't know how many of you 13 pages worth of document. I've skimmed through that. Really amateurish attempt. Different font sizes, this, that, just cobbled together overnight and, just thrown it. You don't defend $1 billion corporations like that. And to say India is under attack, India is always under attack. Why shouldn't India be? We are a growing superpower. It'll be troubling for me if no one is attacking India. I'll be worried. Ki, bhai, are we really powerful enough? Who attacks Canada? Who attacks Pakistan? Some people in the media houses do, but a powerful country is powerful. Half of it is because it is being attacked. So to play the victim card that it is being attacked, absolute nonsense, And every company is open to an attack. Does that mean that every company loses $100 billion? Absolutely not. Tomorrow anybody should come and say that, Ambani's is wrong, Tata's is wrong. Within hours they would have their, resources or whatever come up and say, no, you're absolutely wrong. A, we are suing you. B, this is the reason why you're wrong. And I'll tell you why the Indian government should have come, because as it happens, because of Indian government controlling a taxpayer's money, it has invested a lot in Adani's to the tune of 1 lakh crores, LIC and all those other things. So it is the duty of the Indian government to come out and say, look, our regulators have gone through these companies, and that is the reason why, after which we have invested in this company. We are not investing in any Tom, Dick and Harry. We are investing in Adani because we believe our investment is, bona fide. It still hasn't done that. Prime Minister did not even utter the word Adani in Rajya Sabha. Why? So I don't blame Hindenburg. As far as allegations of the West is concerned, of course the West, why wouldn't West hate India? Give me one reason. We are set to displace it, as the global hegemonic power, you can say, in 20, 30 years from now. Many people would like to believe it's going to happen much sooner, but it will happen, that is certain. So the West hates everything that we do, We should be ready we should welcome it. I would be very worried if, New York Times and Washington Post start writing pro-India articles. That is the time to get worried. Now is the time to rejoice. Sorry, what will happen in 2024? Aayega to Modi. Thank you very much for this lovely session. Thank you.